Audiobook Academy Biography presents Ben Carson. Ben Carson, a well-known neurosurgeon, has been appointed by President Trump as the United States Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. While many of his peers struggled in school, Ben Carson was able to rise through the ranks and eventually earn a spot in medical school. Johns Hopkins Hospital named him Director of Pediatric Neurosurgery at age 33, and he became known for his pioneering work in separating conjoined twins. In 2013, he announced his retirement from medicine, and 2 years later, he entered politics, running for the Republican nomination for President of the United States. A year after he pulled out of the campaign, Carson was named Trump's pick for the post of Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, a position he held until his appointment as Secretary by Trump in January 2017. Early life and family. Second son of Sonia and Robert Solomon Carson, Carson was born in Detroit, Michigan, on September 18, 1951. A third-grade dropout, his mother was reared by a huge, extended family in Tennessee and never finished high school. When she was just 13, Robert Carson, a Baptist minister and factory worker, proposed to her. After settling in Detroit, the couple went on to have 2 children. Sonia found out her spouse was a polygamist with a second family after a long search. Sonia and her children were left in financial ruin after Robert moved in with his other family following their divorce. Mother. Sonia raised Carson, then 8, and Curtis, then 10, on her own as a single mother, moving to Boston to live with her sister for a time before returning to her hometown of Detroit in the end. Sonia often worked 2 or 3 jobs at once in order to make ends meet for her 2 sons, who were born in poverty. Carson's mother was frugal with the family's finances, as he revealed in his autobiography, patching and cleaning clothes from the Goodwill in order to dress her sons. In addition, the family would approach local farmers and offer to pick vegetables in exchange for a share of their harvest. Afterwards, Sonia would can the fruits and vegetables for her children's meals. Carson and Curtis were greatly influenced by her actions and the way she ran the family. To her boys, Sonia was a role model who showed them that anything was possible. Many years later, Carson recalls thinking about a career in medicine. His family would have to wait for hours to see an intern at one of the hospitals in Boston or Detroit in order to receive medical attention. As he watched the doctors and nurses go about their work in the hospital, Carson had the idea that one day they would be asking for a Dr. Carson. The influence of literature. It was difficult for Carson and his brother to succeed in school. Carson had fallen to the bottom of the class and was mocked by his peers. Sonia was determined to make a difference in her boys' lives, so she only allowed them to watch a limited number of shows on TV and wouldn't let them play outside until they finished their homework. She made them read 2 library books a week and submit written reports, despite the fact that she couldn't read them herself due to her lack of formal education. After a few weeks, Carson began to enjoy reading, realizing that he could go anywhere, be anyone, and do anything between the pages of a book. Carson began to develop his imaginative abilities and discovered that he preferred this to watching television. It didn't take long for this fascination with books to turn into a burning desire to study more. It didn't matter what kind of book he was reading, a technical manual or encyclopedia. Carson saw himself as the protagonist and the central figure in every story he read. When he looked back, Carson said that he changed his perspective on his future and realized that he could become the scientist or doctor of his dreams. Once an obsidian rock sample was presented to school, a 5th-grade science teacher was the one who first encouraged Carson's interest in lab work. Within a year, Carson's professors and classmates were awed by his intellectual progress. Recalling information from his books at home, he could connect it to what he was studying at school. Despite this, there were difficulties. Carson's 8th-grade instructor loudly berated his white students for letting a black youngster get ahead of them academically after he awarded him a certificate of achievement. Carson's professors at Southwestern High School in Detroit's inner city recognized his intellectual prowess and encouraged him to continue his education. When he became distracted by factors outside of his control, other educators assisted him in regaining his bearings. Problems with anger management. Carson had a raging temper as a child, which manifested itself in violent behavior. According to his memoirs, he once tried to attack his mother with a hammer because she objected to his choice of attire. While his mother claimed she was the one wielding the hammer, another son, Curtis, intervened in the argument. He claimed to have inflicted a head injury on a classmate during a dispute at his locker in 1988, the Detroit Free Press reported. Finally, Carson recounted a close call with a knife when he and a friend got into an argument over radio station preferences. The knife blade allegedly broke on the friend's belt buckle, according to Carson, and this prevented a tragic event. Carson fled to his house, where he locked himself in the bathroom with a Bible, not knowing the full extent of his friend's injuries. Fearing the consequences of his own actions, he began to pray, seeking God for guidance on how to deal with his explosive anger. Carson came to the conclusion that a large part of his rage was caused by his tendency to place himself at the center of everything that was going on around him. An emerging career in surgery. Carson was a senior commander in Southwestern's ROTC program when he graduated with honors. He attended Yale on a full scholarship and graduated with a BA in English. Earned a psychology degree in 1973. After graduating from the University of Michigan, Carson decided to pursue a career as a neurosurgeon. Upon graduation from Yale, he married Lucina Canty Rustin in 1975. Couple moved to Baltimore to work as interns at Johns Hopkins University in 1977 after Carson completed his medical degree. In his earlier years as a surgeon, his excellent eye-hand coordination and ability to reason in 3 dimensions distinguished him as a top performer. As a neurosurgery resident at Hopkins in 1982, he became the department's chief resident. Carson was invited to an important event in 1983. Perth, Australia's Sir Charles Gairdner Hospital was looking for a neurosurgeon and invited Carson. He initially resisted the idea of moving so far from home, but he eventually agreed to the deal. It turned out to be a crucial one. At the time, Australia lacked neurosurgeons with advanced training. In the year he spent at Gairdner Hospital, Carson got a great deal of experience and developed his talents. At the age of 33, Carson became director of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins, making him the youngest U.S. physician to hold such a position at the time of his appointment. In Germany in 1987, Carson performed an operation to separate 7-month-old occipital craniopagus twins that garnered international attention. Patrick and Benjamin Binder were born with their heads intertwined at birth. Carson was contacted by their parents, and he traveled to Germany to meet with the family and the doctors of the boys. He believed the operation could be successful because the boys' heads were joined at the back and because they had separate brains. A 22-hour operation was performed on September 4, 1987, after months of practice by a large team of doctors, nurses, and support staff. Radical neurosurgery has its share of risks, including the need to minimize patient bleeding and trauma. Carson used hypothermic as well as circulatory arrest in this extremely difficult procedure. However, despite the twins sustaining some brain damage and post-operative bleeding, Carson's surgery was hailed as the first successful procedure of its sort by the medical community. Detaching conjoined twin. The Makwa-Iba twins were separated by Carson and his team in South Africa in 1994. Both girls died as a result of complications from the surgery. Carson was upset, but he determined to carry on nevertheless because he believed in the potential for such operations to succeed. On a trip to Zambia in 1997 with Carson's team, Luca and Joseph Banda were separated from each other as infants. This was the first time a surgery of this kind had been performed, and it was particularly challenging because the boys were joined at the tops of their heads, facing opposite directions. One of the 2 boys who underwent a 28-hour procedure supported by 3D imaging survived, while the other did not suffer brain damage. Carson's efforts came to the attention of the media over time. First, the public was awed by the surgeon's calm demeanor as he explained complex procedures in layman's terms. It was only later that Carson's story became public, a troubled young man from a poor family growing up in the inner city. Almost immediately, Carson began speaking at schools, businesses, and hospitals across the United States, sharing his story and imparting his personal philosophy on life. Carson and his wife established the Carson Scholars Fund in 1994 as a result of their passion for education and supporting young people. Scholarships are awarded by the foundation, which also works to get kids interested in reading at an early age. The biggest obstacle in medicine. One of Carson's most difficult tasks came in 2003, separating a pair of adult conjoined twins. Iranian sisters Ladan and Lala Bijani were linked at the top. They'd been living together in every way imaginable for 29 years. They grew up together, just like any other set of identical twins would, and they shared everything, including their law degrees. But as they matured and developed their own goals and aspirations, they realized they would never be able to live their own lives without separating. "We would rather die than spend another day together," they said to Carson at one point. Because of the potential for harm, no such procedure had ever been attempted on an adult conjoined couple. Dr. Carson had been a neurosurgeon for nearly 20 years and had successfully separated the craniopagus numerous times. Later, he admitted that he tried to persuade the 2 women not to go through with the surgery, but that he eventually agreed to it after a series of discussions with them and consultations with other doctors and surgeons. A group of more than 100 medical professionals, including Carson and other members of the surgical team, traveled to Singapore in Southeast Asia. This operation, which lasted nearly 52 hours, began on July 6, 2003, with Carson and his team. Carson had used a 3D imaging technique to prepare for the Banda twins operation, so they used it once more. The medical staff was able to practice the surgery virtually before it was performed thanks to the computerized images. Their brains were digitally recreated during the procedure. The girls' brains not only shared a major vein, but also had fused together as a result of the surgery. On July 8, the divorce was finalized in the afternoon. There was no mistaking that the girls were in grave danger as time passed. When Ladon was put on the operating table, she died at 2:30 p.m. on the clock. A short time later, her sister Lala passed away. Everyone was devastated, especially Carson, who said that the girls' courage in pursuing the surgery would have a lasting impact on the field of neurosurgery for generations to come. Carson has been honored with multiple honorary doctorate degrees and awards for his tireless efforts on behalf of children and his various medical achievements. He has also served on numerous corporate and educational board of directors. Diagnosis of cancer, literature, and film. After being diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2002, Carson was forced to slow down his once insane pace. They operated on him, and he was involved in the process from start to finish. Carson was cancer-free after undergoing surgery. It was after this close call with death that his priorities in life were re-evaluated, and he now prioritizes spending time with his wife and their 3 children, Murray, Benjamin S.R., and Royce. A few months after making a full recovery, Carson was back in the operating room and giving speeches to a variety of groups across the country. Gifted Hands is one of several books he has written, including a best-selling autobiography, 1990. Some of his other books, such as Think Big, 1992, The Big Picture, 1999, and Take the Risk, 2007, discuss his own views on education and success, as well as his religious beliefs. As a living legend in 2000, Carson was recognized by the Library of Congress and CNN/Time magazine as one of the nation's top doctors and scientists. He was awarded the NAACP's highest honor, the Spingarn Medal, in 2006. Presidential Medals of Freedom and Ford's Theater Lincoln Medal were presented to Carson in February 2008. Carson was portrayed on television in 2009 by actor Cuba Gooding Jr. Run for the presidency. As he became more involved in politics, Carson became known as a conservative Republican. The Beautiful, Rediscovering What Made This Nation Great was his 2012 book. Carson's comments at the National Prayer Breakfast in February 2013 drew a lot of attention. He slammed President Obama for his views on taxes and health care. The following month, he announced that he was retiring as a surgeon. In October of that year, he was hired as a contributor by Fox News. It was only a matter of time before Carson released his New York Times bestseller, One Nation, What We Can All Do to Save America's Future, in May of 2014. At an event in Detroit on May 4, 2015, Carson announced his candidacy for the Republican nomination. Carson clarified, "I'm not a politician. The reason I don't want to be a politician is because politicians only do what is in their best interests. I'm trying to do the right thing." While in campaign, Carson was one of the top 10 candidates to take part in a Fox News presidential debate in early August, despite the crowded field. As time passed, Carson's popularity grew, and he was considered a frontrunner in the race for the Republican presidential nomination against vocal competitor Donald Trump. A More Perfect Union, Carson's second book, was released in October. He is a Seventh-day Adventist. Several news outlets questioned Carson's claims about his time in Gifted Hands after he began his presidential campaign. A report by Politico claimed that Carson never applied to West Point, despite his claims in the book to the contrary. His team later confirmed this. The veracity of Carson's claims that he was a violent child was also called into question, leading CNN to look into his school days and life in his old neighborhood. Carson's candidacy never really took off, despite an early surge in support. His rallies drew enthusiastic crowds, but they were significantly smaller than those of the other leading candidates. He made it through the fall and into the new year despite rumors circulating that he was quitting from the race. Nevertheless, his dismal performance on Super Tuesday, the first Tuesday in March of 2016, all but sealed his demise. On March 2, 2016, Ben Carson declared that he will not be attending the Republican debate in his hometown of Detroit on March 3 because he didn't see a route ahead for his campaign. In front of an enthusiastic crowd the following afternoon at CPAC, Conservative Political Action Conference, he discussed his values and the issues he felt were important in the current campaign. In particular, he thanked the family of Brandon Joplin, an Iowa staffer who was killed in a car accident during the Iowa caucuses, as well as the rest of his campaign team and volunteers. Standing ovation followed his announcement that he was off the campaign path. On the topic of voting, Carson told an anecdotal story about someone who claimed that they wouldn't vote for anyone but Carson in the event that he didn't run. Carson described this as troubling, saying that not voting at all was giving their vote to the other side, and he urged his supporters to vote. He later endorsed Donald Trump. As the campaign progressed, Carson became one of Trump's most devoted supporters, stumping for him across the country in the lead-up to the election. On November 8, 2016, Trump was elected the 45th President of the United States, winning the majority of Electoral College votes. As far as Carson is concerned, he doesn't have any government experience. When it comes to the president, he wouldn't want to jeopardize it in any way. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Ben Carson has a brilliant mind and is passionate about strengthening communities and families within those communities, Trump said in a statement. On December 5, 2016, Trump announced he was nominating Carson as the Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. Although Democratic opponents were concerned about Carson's lack of housing experience, the Senate Banking, Housing and Urban Affairs Committee unanimously approved Carson's nomination on January 24, 2017. The Senate confirmed his nomination in a vote of 58 to 41 on March 2, 2017. Carson was confirmed by the Senate on March 2, 2017. A former HUD chief administrative officer filed a federal whistleblower complaint in late February 2018, claiming she was demoted for refusing to fund a $31,000 dining room set for Carson's office and describing an environment in which high-level officials told her to do so. After a week, The New York Times published an in-depth look at the HUD's problems, including Carson's inability to influence the president and prevent significant budget cuts, as well as his lack of experience, which threatened to derail his pet project, a network of centers aimed at providing low-income families with one-stop access to educational, job training, and healthcare services. As Carson put it, doing this job is going to be a very intricate process. The HUD's budget was the topic of Carson's appearance before the House Appropriations Subcommittee in March. However, he spent most of his time explaining his wife's $31,000 dining room set purchase, which he claimed he had dismissed from decision-making, despite emails obtained through the Freedom of Information Act showing that he had input. After President Trump's first term, HUD's Secretary Ben Carson told Newsmax TV that he would like to return to the private sector because you have just as much influence, maybe more, there, he said. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.